The one and only Michael Sartain, a retired U.S. Air Force captain.
It took me a year and 4 months to get in. When 9/11 happened, it was hard to get in the U.S. military as an officer.
You know, only 3% of the United States is even eligible as a population to join the military.
Yeah, and less than 1% of the U.S. population has ever been in the military, which a lot of people don't realize. In the military, you learned leadership studies. And I saw some bad officers. The guy who always wants to intimidate you, that's a bad leader.
What's next? What was that like for you?
As soon as we land in Wichita, I can't walk. I went from 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 22 degrees Fahrenheit. And what they figured out is that I have psoriatic arthritis.
What happened next? How did you find some work?
I wanted to become an actor. I decided to move to Los Angeles.
I did not know this about you.
Moved to LA. I lived in LA for a while and I was like, bro, it's bad. People are getting roles for doing. During this time, something happened where I discovered.
I have so many questions for you. What would you say is the number one attribute for them to prepare as they exit?
You need a discernible skill that solves someone else's problem or you're not going to make any money.
All right, we are live with the Amy Is Show. Today, my guest is the one and only Michael Sartain. And I am so excited to interview with Michael today because Michael is one of the reasons I even got started on this show. And what is even better about this whole setup here is he is also a former service member. He is a retired U.S. Air Force captain, and I cannot wait to dive into all of the things Michael Sartain on a military front. Michael, welcome.
Hey, I'm nervous. I can't believe I made it to this show, man. My guidance counselor said I wasn't going to be shit, and I ended up on Amy Is Show. That's awesome.
Did you have me on your vision board this year?
Yes, absolutely. Chance? You were on the you were definitely on the vision board to come in there.
And on
it was like here
yeah.
it goes The Rock. It was Joe Rogan. And then it was Amy. It was Queen Amy right above there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
or
Lieutenant Amy, as I refer you to.
I love this for us.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited. So I have so many questions for you, but just kind of a quick recap. So my show is really designed around helping soldiers, veterans of all of the military branches. I love to talk about people's journeys, getting into the military, their journey in the military, and then getting out. Most importantly, what is life like on the outside of the military when you leave? Because when you're in a brotherhood, sisterhood like that, and then you depart, it's kind of like leaving an abusive relationship almost. It's scary.
An abusive relationship is funny.
It's a little scary, right?
Not inaccurate. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your journey with the military. What got you started in the military? When did you join? How old are you? Just give me the whole shebang.
Yeah. So I'm 46, so you can guess. 9/11 happened. I was 24 years old. I was working in a gentleman's club as a DJ. They paid me a lot of money in cash. I may or may not have been paying taxes. And I met this guy named Tony Q. And Tony Q had been working in a strip club for 26 years and had put 2 of his daughters through college. And I looked at that motherfucker and I said, that's not what I want to do with the rest of my life. I have got to get out of this job. I will do whatever. Anyway, 9/11 happens while I'm working at the gentleman's club. And I go, and I have 2 frat brothers. One of them, Marcus Cole, he was C-130 pilot, and he was an instructor at Corpus Christi for the Navy. And then the other one was an EA-6B navigator named Antonio Edwards. He passed away from sarcoidosis a couple years ago during COVID. And they had joined. They were in my fraternity. They joined before me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to join. Initially, I was going to be the Marine Corps officer. They did not have a slot in intelligence that I wanted. And then so I went to the Air Force and I said, I'll do intel for you guys if that's what you want. And they said, sure. They made me take the AFOQT and I scored like in the highest percentile for nav pilot. They said, you're either going to be a pilot or a navigator. That's the only way we're going to let you join. So I ended up joining and I said, I'll be a navigator. Then they asked me again, when all navigators, they ask you to apply to pilot school. I was not interested in giving 11 years of my life to the U.S. Air Force. So I did 4 years as a navigator. It was like 3 years of training, 4 years as my enlistment or whatever. And I flew a KC-135. I probably have 700 hours in a KC-135 and probably another 200 hours in a Cessna 172. And then I was also a mission planner for a while. And then at the end, I had by the way, it took me a year and 4 months to get in. When your country goes to war, a lot of people want to join the military, believe it or not. When 9/11 happened, it was hard to get in the U.S. military as an officer.
You know, only 3% of the United States is even eligible as a population to join the military. Did you know that?
Yeah, and less than 1% of the U.S. population has ever been in the military, which a lot of people don't realize. So I end up when I'm in there, I ended up getting diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. They don't know. It might have been the JP8. Like some people think it could be like an allergic reaction to all the diesel fuel or whatever. Mm-hmm. When I got it, they could not allow me to fly anymore without taking prednisone, which is a steroid. So I was deniffed. And then I moved into counterintelligence after that. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I got out. the biggest transition for me, and there's a bunch of things. In the military, you learned leadership studies. And I don't know what it's like for you in the Army, but for us, I was constantly updating a master's degree on like what good leadership looks like and what bad leadership looks like. And I saw some bad officers. I remember certain officers, I don't know if you've ever seen this, the guy who always wants to intimidate you, but like you can't get clear instruction from him and you can't tell if that was an order or if he was joking. That guy who's too stoic, that's a bad leader, believe it or not. Even though we think of General Patton, that's a bad leader. Then we have the other leader who's like, it's never her fault or it's never his fault, or the leader who isn't proficient in their job, meaning they're a company commander, but they can't drive a tank anymore, you know, or they're out of shape, right? They're out of regs.
Yeah.
Like that guy also was an issue. It's like I had one squadron commander. She was a good pilot and she was a good commander, and that was great. And the next one after her was neither. She wasn't able to do either one of those things. And she got fired. And I didn't know a commander could get fired. I didn't know how that relieved of duty. I didn't know how that worked. So that was something that I learned while I was there. When I got out and I moved to Vegas, I remember recognizing the ability of like me being accountable and showing up on time to things. Like for instance, we're doing Access Vegas after this. I had 25 girls booked for the show, and I just knew by the time we did it, there would only be 9. Sure enough, there's 9. It's just, for some reason, I'm not trying to pick on girls specifically, but like people who work in nightlife, like they're not accountable to their word. Like when you're in the U.S. military, they will throw you in jail. You don't get to not go on a deployment. You go to jail. Like it's like that. So the lack of accountability is something when you get out, that's probably the number one thing I had to get used to, is that people could be wealthy enough, famous enough, or good looking enough to just like say something and then not keep their word, and then nothing would happen to them. And I wasn't used to that. And so it's really funny because you're talking about the brotherhood you leave. I created that brotherhood again with Men of Action, my mentoring course, my performance coaching course. I treat it like they're U.S. military officers and we're going through CFIC, instructor training. That's what I teach it as. It's for me, when I went from a mission navigator to an instructor navigator, I kind of took the way we do pre-briefs and all that kind of stuff, and I put it into my course with multiple modules and things that they had to study up on and like a curriculum they had to read. And I try to do that, and I try to keep accountability, community, and networking in my course as close as I can. And I also encourage physical fitness, more so than the U.S. Air Force did, by the way. I try to do those things in my course to replicate the good parts of being in the military. Now, there's also the people who are in the military, not a lot of entrepreneurial mindset. The U.S. military does not promote entrepreneurial, creative mindset. It just doesn't. It promotes following directions and reading checklists, which is fine. I mean, there's a lot. It's discipline, mission, morale, and discipline. That's what it promotes. And when you get out, one of the things you want to be able to do when you get out is not continue, like go from being a cog in a machine to another cog in a machine, just in the private sector, although you can make a lot more money, right? But what I would recommend people do is like it's one of the hardest things wasn't learning that the people outside the military were unaccountable. It was learning how to work with the people who are unaccountable, because I still want to make money. I still want to run a business. I still want to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes I have to work with people who don't have the same level of integrity or accountability that I do. It'd be great if all my vendors were just like us, but it's just not possible. And so we look for people who are like that. But at the same time, I also know, like I do a show, I host a bikini competition, or I do a show, and I have a bunch of girls who like do not see the same level of urgency in being on time and accountable that I do. And so I just have to learn to work with them and just like, not be judgmental. The term I use is discerning without being judgmental. So that's the thing I've learned after getting out of the military, is I'm still discerning. There's certain people I don't want to work with, but I'm not judgmental towards them like I was, sometimes, people are sometimes in the U.S. military.
So tell me a little bit about your exit from the military itself.
Yeah.
So that transition period, it's like one of the scariest times for service members, because again, you're leaving that brother sisterhood. You're not really quite sure what's next. I mean, the military, as you probably recall, there's a very set ranking structure. There's courses you go to, right? It's very defined. So leaving and going into kind of the abyss of what's next, what was that like for you?
So there was 2 things here. Like, first off, I knew I was going to get out after 7.5 years. I wasn't that interested in trying to make major. I would have to, there was some boxes I needed to check that I just didn't feel like doing. I was going to have to be like the LNO at Balad, and then I was going to have to finish a master's in something. And I was just like, bro, I just don't want to do this. Before, I was supposed to get out in June of 2011, and I got out in February 2011 because I was medically retired. So for me, there was a little bit more certainty. And I was just going to go live with my mom, who lived in Dallas. My father had passed away. She had this big house. I could just live in Dallas And Dallas is a fun city to live in. So like when I got out, I really wasn't that stressed. The other thing is I'm going to get in trouble for this, but my unit doesn't exist anymore, to be fair, the 19th Air Refueling Group. I used to take the alert phone and go to nightclubs. I used to go to nightclubs in Atlanta. I was stationed in Warner Robins, Georgia, and I was the alert officer that weekend whenever there were flights that went on during the weekend. You had to have somebody take the phone with them so that they could retask
you were
missions.
on call and you're like in the club getting lit.
But just so we're clear, I don't drink or do any drugs ever. So like there would be times where I'd be in a hotel room in Atlanta and I was like retasking missions, or at least I had the binder and I would tell them like what it is that was supposed to happen. One of my commanders found out about it, said you can't, the weekends you have the phone, you can't go to Atlanta. So that's what happened there. So yeah, man, it was, it's just the transition to get out. So what happened was, I got back from the summer surge of 2009 in Afghanistan. I get back, and I remember running to the bus because I was trying to catch the bus to go to Chow, and there was something in my foot, and I thought a rock was in my left foot, in my left shoe. And those boots are not made to run in. So I'm talking about the big flight boots, right, with the steel toes. And so I was like, I'm sure there's something happened. And then I was like, oh, you know what this probably is? It's a stress fracture. It's a stress fracture because I played a lot of basketball while I was there. Maybe it's from jiu-jitsu or something. I don't know what it was, but I maybe thought I had a stress fracture. So I come back. As soon as we land in Wichita, McConnell Air Force Base, I can't walk. And I mean, I can't walk. I have to have people help me off the plane because my right foot, I can't put any pressure on it because I went from 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 22 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the change in pressure and temperature caused my foot to completely lock up. So I go to the doctor the next day and they're like, yeah, we're looking to see if you have a stress fracture, but it doesn't look like you have a stress fracture. We're trying to see what goes on. And what they figured out is that I have psoriatic arthritis. So it was one of these things where my foot had swollen up so much because of an arthritic condition. And they started giving me drugs for it, which eventually deniffed me. And it took me a while. Originally, they were going to give me 30% disability. They gave me more than that afterwards once I showed them my x-rays or whatever. And then I got out. It took a while for me to get out. And when I retired, I think it was probably the best way for me to retire. I think it was perfect amount of time to be in. 7 years is the perfect amount of time.
It's like right at the high too.
Yeah.
You made a great rank.
Well, yeah, I made captain. But the other thing was I also fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I was also part of the summer surge of Afghanistan. Like I got to see action. I think if I had done it this last decade, unless you're a trigger puller, if you're an operator on the ground, you probably would have saw more action. But like, there's not a ton for. I just don't know that 15s, 16s, 22s, the AC-130s were like doing a ton near the end of our engagement in Afghanistan. I don't think they were. When I was there, they were. When I was there, the gunships were still firing.
Where were you at over in Afghanistan?
So because I was stationed, because the KC-135 has like we can fly halfway around the planet. Mm-hmm. We would take off from Doha, Qatar, or from Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi. Okay. No, because the problem with Bagram is you need 10,000 feet of runway for a heavy. So you won't see AWACS or the 135 variants, any of the 707 variants, you won't see them land there. They can, but they don't want to do it because it requires too much maintenance. It's too much space. So you see 130s land there, C-17s, things that can land and take off on short runways. Mm-hmm. You'll see them land at Bagram. Or helicopters, a lot of helicopters, a lot of tanks,
tons of helicopters, yeah.
But you're not going to see a ton, like the heavy planes that cost $30 million. Those are going to take off out of Abu Dhabi or they're going to take off out of Doha. And when they take off, you go around the southern end of Iran through Pakistan, and then you go and you fly missions in Afghanistan, and you have enough fuel to get all the way back. It's crazy the distances you can fly. You'll do 12-hour missions and fly over there. And I saw some pretty crazy stuff when I was there, but it was really interesting. I did special ops air refueling. So basically, I'm not going to say the numbers, but we would refuel at nighttime with no lights on, with aircraft going under 200 knots. Like that's how we would do it. So you can probably figure out what those aircraft were, but like daytime B2 refuelings, that we'd only do that stateside. You don't refuel B2s during the daytime. You would refuel them in the AO. You refuel them at nighttime. We do everything at night. So the way it works with the KC-135 is when you fly nighttime operations, you have to have a navigator on board. You don't have to have one on board during daytime stuff. So I would just only fly the nav missions.
Amazing. Yep. I was over in Afghanistan too. I was over in Sharana, which is a very small base. They have helicopters and stuff there too. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us from your transition. So you kind of had a plan. You went to your mom's house. What happened next? How did you find some work?
So I the unemployment at first, and I was still getting a paycheck from the government, and I wanted to like become an actor. So I decided to move to Los Angeles.
I did not know this about you.
I moved to LA, and I went to Burbank. I'm still friends with the guys who are my acting coach right now, and me are still really good friends. I will tell you right now, Men of Action exists in part because of what he taught me. I was moving my head too much. I was way too dramatic. There was a bunch of things that I learned from watching this guy and taking this film acting course, and I took it for a while. Then I went to work for him for a while. He was a talent agent, and I learned a ton about Los Angeles. And I learned that, like the stuff Cat Williams said about like, I don't need somebody touching my booty hole. Like that is real. That I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, like that is a real thing. The Jeffrey Epstein stuff, like it's not the exception. It's kind of the fucking rule there. Like I lived in LA for a while, and I was like, this is the seediest place I've ever been in my entire life.
Oh, 100%. But wait. Yeah. Is the military a seedy place? Because I
mean, to a certain extent, but you're not making 05 because you fucked a fucking colonel. That's not. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But people are getting roles for doing sexual favors in
100%.
Bro, it's bad, and I just don't think people understand how bad it is. So anyway, I'm there, and I do that for a while, and I just realized how much I don't like Los Angeles. Like living there, the events there were great. I would have a great time doing those, and then I would go there for parties, and I would do like what's it called, the Maxim parties. I did the Playboy Mansion for a while. I did Babies in Toyland, and I started hosting a bikini competition in Las Vegas. During this time, something happened where I discovered this company called Tasty Trade. Tom Sosnoff and Tony Batista were working there, and it was an online financial network. And they taught me how to trade stock options. So I traded stock options professionally from 2013 to now. I still trade them professionally for a company called Continental Financial Capital. So that's what I did for a living for those years. But if you lived in Vegas, no one knew that. They just thought that I was a dude who just showed up at clubs with a bunch of girls. No one had any idea. People thought I was buying these tables. People thought I was a fucking drug dealer. They thought I was a pimp, whatever, because I would just be with a bunch of girls. There was no context for what I was doing. Until the bikini competitions came out, then it made a little bit more sense. But it was just one of these things where it was like, that Vegas is very much like that. If you go out to a club, you're going to meet people who are like outrageously wealthy and just spend $100K, and you can't understand what they do for a living. You understand? They're like, it's just really hard to explain. They do some kind of B2B shit, where they just don't understand. You don't know what they're doing for a living. And so, I lived here for a while, and I just love Vegas so much because it's just easy. Like I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, but when you're on base, you can do everything on base. Like there's a BX, and there's like a fucking gym, and there's billeting for your parents if they come visit you, and there's, what I'm saying, there's everything's there. There's a restaurant there. There's a Burger King.
All convenient.
Right. Vegas is like that, but it's a city like that. It's like there's a 5-star restaurant we can go eat at 4:00 in the morning. That you can't do this in other cities. And if I want to go see, my favorite DJs, let's say I want to go see Deadmau5, or if I want to go see Steve Aoki, I can literally just like go there. No, I'm a local, so they let me go in. Other people are paying hundreds of dollars to go see him in concert. I'm just walking in. I'm standing on stage right behind him. Might even shake his fucking hand, and I'm back home in 12 minutes. I just like, the city was just so easy. It just reminded me like it was very efficient. My gym is built into my high rise. Like I was like, man, this is great compared to Los Angeles, where I had no place to park. I was just like, I just love this place. So that's why I moved to Vegas, and I've never looked back, man. This is definitely the greatest city I've ever lived. If there was no strip, this would still be the greatest city I've ever lived in.
One of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on the show with me and talk, just about veteran topics is because you have the Men of Action course.
Yeah.
And you've been a commander, you've led people, you're an expert in leadership.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm really interested in your take on is, you've got someone who's leaving the military. Most people aren't officers leaving the military, right? And so you got your enlisted guys, et cetera, and girls. What would you say is the number one kind of mental attribute for them to prepare as they exit and they venture into civilian life?
There's a level of security you have, because even the like 4th best NCO in your unit is not getting fired. They're still going to put him somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They'll shuffle around. It's almost like the Catholic Church. They're going to shuffle you to a different parish. The difference is when you get out, one of the things that you need to transmit in your mind or transmute is the idea that you need a discernible skill that solves someone else's problem, or you're not going to make any money. That's just it. And it's hard because the military doesn't teach you that. Military teaches you how to follow orders and build things and take things apart and follow regulations and memorize regulations. But when you get out, if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur or a salesperson or whatever, there's a skill set that you need to learn that's specific, that doesn't have to do with taking apart an M16 or an M4. Like that doesn't have to do with that. And you need to focus on that skill set and then use your contacts in the military and your GI Bill and all the advantages that I still have a ton of advantages being in the military, but use those as well. But at the same time, just understand when you want to make a lot of money, because that's, to be honest with you, the biggest transition for me, the biggest transition for most guys is, how do I make money now? I promise you, if somebody got out of the military and they were stressed and you gave them $40 million, they wouldn't be stressed anymore. They'd be like, okay, I was stressed, but like, I'm good now. It's fine. Like I'll pay my way through this.
I'm in Aruba.
Yeah, I'm Aruba. I'm Aruba stressed because I had to leave my job. If people had enough money, they wouldn't be, a lot of this stress would go away. A lot of uncertainty. So again, when you're transitioning out, what is the discernible skill that you have? A lot of them are just like waiting around to get that civilian contractor job that they think they're going to get, being a GS-12 or whatever.
Right.
And the problem with that is like so many people are competing for those jobs. Now you're going to get preferential treatment because you're prior.
You get like what, 10 military points or
something?
Yeah.
You get because you're prior service. But I just like, it's one of these things where you need to figure out a skill set that you have and then figure out what to do with it. Now, like, for instance, if you're a Navy SEAL, what skill set do you have? You can write a book, because that's what they all do. Yeah. Every Navy SEAL ends up writing a book. It's crazy. Air Force navigators, we don't have any books. No, that I'll be the first navigator to have a book. But it's so funny, like how many SEALs said, you're a SEAL, you start a podcast, you get an energy drink as your sponsor, and you write a book. That's what you do. But no, man, it's you find out what your discernible skill is outside the military. When you're a SEAL, dude, your job is so fucking awesome. You can talk about it all day. My job is, I'm flying a big ugly tanker, so it wasn't that cool. But
I mean, I had it way worse. I was in human resources. I'm like, nobody wants to hear me talk about HR.
Nara Ford did that. Did you know Nara Ford? You got to have her on. Nara Ford was an E3 in the Air Force, and she was HR. Yeah, she was it was fucking crazy. So she's stripping at the Rhino while she's working as an E3 in HR over at Nellis. While she's doing that, the Rhino does a photo shoot, and then they put her on the cover of the billboard. So you're going up Nellis Boulevard, and the commander sees Airman Ford up there like this, and then pulls her into the office. Yeah, they kicked her out.
100%. I knew that was gonna. And
they kicked her out, and that was, and she was happy, dude. She was happy to get out. It was like she had a service commitment. But I've seen that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
Oh man, in San Antonio, military city. There's 5 military bases there. And let me tell you something, guys. If you're an officer in San Antonio, every time if you go to a strip club and buy a table dance, you need to ask her if she's enlisted. Like, that's the first thing you need to do. There's so many enlisted girls stripping in San Antonio. It is crazy, especially if they're in their guard. There's crazy stuff like that that's going on.
Well, I want to like quickly like put a big pin in this topic and like address it, because one of the reasons I wanted to have this show is because there's so many incredible women that are doing incredible things in the military, yet there is this horrible trend, rumor, whatever, that like women must be, ladies of the night, or desert flowers, or barracks bunnies, or whatever, you can fill in the blanks. Desert queen, et cetera, just because they're women in the military. And I mean, my story is crazy. I was definitely denied going to some of the best schools, like Air Assault School, Rappel Master School, you name it, just because I was a girl.
Yeah.
And it took me 8 years of asking to go to that course, and I was only denied because I was a girl. And on the 8th year of me asking to go, I finally killed it, and I ended up being the first female in the history of the Oregon Army National Guard to pass this course, and I got an award for it, right? So like, there's these really, really cool stories, and that's just like one. But then there's also women like Kristen Greist, who's over in New York, that was the first Ranger to go through Ranger School, over in 2016. So I mean, like, there's all these incredible women just absolutely crushing it, and I hate the trend that like women must be.
Well, I'll tell you, it's even worse than that. In some instances where I know a girl, I'll introduce you to her. I don't want to say her name because her story is she's pretty public, but she was sexually assaulted by an NCO in the U.S. Marine Corps. And after it happened, she had proof that it all happened or whatever. And her assaulter ended up going to Leavenworth. The wife of the person who assaulted her is like, why would you do this to my family? Meaning like no, I just got sexually assaulted, and you're sitting there saying, but the problem is the commandant of the Marine Corps came to her and said, we'll give you 100% retirement. And she was on the way to becoming an E9. And got out because of it, and then she ended up posing for Playboy after she got out. So it was one of these crazy situations where, in general, this is where I kind of differ from like a lot of people in the red pill community. I think sexual assault is underreported. I think especially in the military, when you have 6 guys to every girl. Guys, don't be stupid. Obviously, these guys haven't seen a woman in a while. I will tell you this: there was this one lieutenant. She was intel, and she would give us our intel brief before we go fly over Afghanistan. And I remember thinking, why is this woman not a model? I was like, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. Cause I'd been there for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this woman so beautiful? And then I bumped into her in McConnell and I'm like, that is the most average looking chick I've ever seen in my life.
But
like,
it's so true. It's so true. But it's the same for girls. I mean, when I saw guys over there, we were there, it's UN, right? So you get the guys from Poland, Czech, Germans, French, you name it. So there's all these gorgeous looking men. I mean, imagine me. I mean, I was like, 21, 22 when I was over in Afghanistan. So I'm looking across the room and I see these guys in like full beards, huge, tatted, foreign nationals. I'm like dying there. Like these are the sexiest guys I've ever seen in my life, right? But then, there's also the average looking guys too, where they look 10 times better because there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's so weird what it does to you when you're there and you're like in an austere location of Afghanistan, but it's also Altus, Oklahoma. That's another austere location. Yeah. And you haven't seen a woman for like forever, you know what I'm saying? Except, it's very different. It also is another thing where I kind of like, one of the reasons I teach guys to have like a level of abundance is to have a ton of female friends so that you don't get put in that situation. So every time you see a pretty girl, you start acting dumb, so that's one of the issues that's happened. But I had, there was one, she was a major in my unit and she's a pretty girl. She's Filipino. She's very attractive. And she, I remember her, every guy in the unit. Cause like how often a lot of guys are trying to like date in their socioeconomic or IQ bracket. She's a major in the U.S. Air Force and she's attractive. So the dudes were like they were fighting for her attention. And she told me stories after we both got out of the military. I met her up one time. We had drinks or whatever. And she was telling me, she was like, you remember so-and-so? He's like, yeah. She's like, he was stalking me. I was like, that dude's married. He's like, yeah, he was stalking me. And then you remember this person? Yeah, he was stalking me. And this commander was, and I was like, I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it at the time, like how crazy it was. But when you put men in that level of scarcity where there's like no women around, men start acting, crazy.
I had a lieutenant that was a PA while I was over in Afghanistan. I actually reported this too, that would walk by the office I was in. I was in an office by myself doing my work, and he would walk by and the door was closed. I used to have like this wooden door. I was in the mail room and like people would come by and get the mail, and he would walk by and I would open the thing and he would like kick the wall and like just kind of like threatening, like almost, like he would do that all the time just because he wanted my attention. This guy was married, had kids at home, you name it. So I mean, like, I could go on and on about the crazy stories I have too about me being in the military, but
it is weird.
It's wild.
There's certain traits that humans have that the military rewards that don't fit so well in regular society, like a proclivity for extreme amounts of violence, a level of stoicism, or even in some cases psychopathy. And we're talking about very, very minimal number of military members that are like this, but sometimes they're like this.
Yeah.
And then we let them out in the real world and haven't given them the skills in order to like deal with the real world. But they know how to, take apart a Humvee, but they don't know, they don't have real world skills as far as sales.
Yeah, and surviving in society.
How to pay taxes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part is pretty difficult. But yeah, the relationships in the military. One thing, dude. So I dated an OSI agent. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. So she was a GS-12 and I was an O2. And the only reason I went out with her was because she wasn't in the military. There were some lieutenants in my unit, and I was like, I'm just not doing. Like, I just know how bad this is going to fucking end up.
It's so smart not to.
Like, you don't guys. I need to explain this to you. So, you have a best friend, and you and your best friend, especially if your best friend's female, you have a best friend, and your best friend's female, and you tell your best friend where all the bodies are buried. You tell them all the secrets or whatever. If something goes wrong, a small thing, and she's not your best friend anymore, all those secrets are up for sale now.
100%.
And you don't realize that. And so when you're sitting there dating someone in your unit, you're snitching on yourself in a way that you don't want. Like, it's not good. Now, it's much worse for women than men. I know that if there was some, if there was some senior airman that ended up like, I don't know, sleeping with a bunch of women and it got back to the commander, they'd be like, ha ha ha, funny, drink it off. Don't do that again. If a female did that, like a female squadron commander found out she slept with like 15 dudes, what would they do? They would act crazy. There was a total double standard. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, like, it's the women that get crucified in most of these scenarios. I think it's starting to change, but there's still a really toxic problem in the military. But the women are the one that get like hung out to dry.
Yeah. I mean, it is difficult because in some of these areas, the Air Force, not so much because we have a lot of female pilots. But in some of these areas, it's like very difficult when it's a male-dominated thing. I just for women now have to fit and inculcate into like whatever the society is. Like for instance, Marine Corps infantry, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult thing to do, and there's going to be like some difficulty with the transition. I also was there during the transition between Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then when they repeal that. that happened while I was in, and it was very interesting because there were some guys that were in my unit that I knew were gay. Like, it was pretty obvious they were gay. There was also, I had an instructor in San Antonio, and I knew he was gay. Like, they were pretty open about it, but like they couldn't be open about it at work. And so that was something that changed while I was in there too. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's kind of a weird place. I recommend it to anyone. Whenever anybody tells me they have the opportunity to become an officer in the military, I always say yes. Like, even if you're going to be an entrepreneur, do that. If you want to get enlisted, I think I have a lot of people, especially when they have a problem with delayed gratification. One of the things I recommend is that they join the military. Military is like, you're not paying; they're paying you for boarding school. You know what I'm saying? And you learn a lot of good stuff. So
would you have, like, for me, I went through, I was at E6 before I started going through OCS, and that brought me a lot of respect by doing it that way.
Definitely.
If you had to do it all over again, would you go
enlisted first? No, but the enlisted guys were the ones who helped me a lot. Like, we knew, we weren't stupid. Like when I went through OTS, anytime there was a guy who was like an E5, I would listen to whatever he had to say. We had a couple of E6s, one E7 in my unit when I was going through, and we were all second lieutenants once we got done. And it was just kind of a weird situation. I will say this, like, everyone knows this. If you're an officer in the military, there is some NCO in your unit who's more skilled and talented and knows where the body's better than any officer in the unit, including the commander.
Yeah.
And that's the guy you got to make friends with, because he can make your life make life horrible. Just think of like the secretary at the office you work at who knows all the passwords to everything. She can make your life hard.
100%.
Yeah. So like you kind of have to learn that. There's also another aspect of being in the military, which is storytelling. Like, guys learn how to tell really good stories. Bilzerian and I talk about this sometimes. Dan Bilzerian is one of the best storytellers I've ever met. If you sit around with him and you can just get him to start, he gets on a roll, he tells the best fucking stories. And the reason why is because he's former fucking Navy, he's enlisted Navy, and that's what you're around. You're around a bunch of these crotchety old NCOs that are like 45 years old and have been in like 4 wars. And these guys tell amazing stories, and it's like a tradition in the U.S. military to like pass down these traditions, and that's why we all know why. That's why we all know why the what is it called? The Fred, fucking ridiculous economic disaster. The C5. That we call it Fred. We have names for all this kind of stuff.
I don't know this one.
You never heard this?
No.
Yeah.
This must be a chair force thing.
Yeah, the Air Force thing. We call it. You guys know, even C5 pilots call it Fred.
Did you guys see that? I got a chair force.
Yeah,
in
there you go. She got it. Fucking ridiculous economic disaster. We had, fucking unsat, right? We learned all these traditions passing down. Obviously, one of the traditions we can't do anymore is when people fall asleep, you used to draw dicks on their face. You can't do that anymore. The military's gotten rid of that.
Yeah, I like some of the hazing stuff for sure, though. I mean, like, I definitely went through my own rite of passage, you know?
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, you're in the Army. Yeah.
So one of the things I definitely want to cover with you is because you have a team.
Yeah.
You do some amazing stuff over at Men of Action and some of the other projects that you work on. And my story of getting into the corporate world and things right out of the military was because I had the amazing support of a military veterans group,
sure.
Nike. So my first job out of the military was Nike. And I got that because I met somebody, Charles Leverton, who was the head of the Nike military veterans group. And he got me an interview, and he did like a resume review with me, and he really made sure I was prepared to be corporate, which is so freaking different than being in the military, right? And to your point earlier, you can't be an 11 Bravo grunt, infantry guy, I know how to put back together an M16.
If you're an 11 Bravo and then you transition to become a personal trainer, I can see that. That might work. Or even a jiu-jitsu instructor. There's a transition that will work there.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other things, like, I need to code in Python. This is not a good transition.
So what would you, if you were talking back to yourself when you first got out, what would you tell yourself now are the main things to think about when you're going into an interview and preparing yourself, like your resume and all of that? What do you need to have ready to go?
Yeah, so I'm always, whenever I do interviews, like I'm interviewing Jeremy Miner on Friday, and then Mystery, Eric von Markovic, I'm interviewing him on Monday. I want to know more than anyone who's ever interviewed them. So I try to be really sharp. This happened because I did a military pre-brief from when I went to instructor upgrade, and I got embarrassed. I went on stage and I did not know what I was fucking talking about. I barely knew anything, and it was really bad. Everyone looked disappointed in me. I was like, this will never happen to me again. I did 12 hours of studying on the fucking pneumatic system in a KC-135. I knew that plane backwards and forwards, how the entire hydraulic system worked, the fuel lines, everything. And I decided to treat all of my interviews the same way. And so it's different because you're asking about a job interview, but it's kind of the same. I've never gone to a job interview where I didn't get the job. whenever I would go in, I would know more than almost anybody that had been in there before, and I would be able to solve problems that they had. And never at any point did I say, I would feel really great if you guys hired me. It was never about me. I think this would really help my family if I worked here. It's never about me. This is one of the things you have to learn, is that your usefulness to society is in how many problems that you solve. You are paid in linear proportion to the complexity of the problem you solve. That's what Elon Musk said. So that's what I try to learn, is like how much, I would try to do that as far as a transition. The number one thing I would tell people when they get out, though, is get addicted to audiobooks. In fact, do it while you're in the military. Get addicted to audiobooks and like figure out what your skill set is going to be when you're out. And here's the thing. If you can keep the level of discipline, the ability to delay gratification, the accountability that you have, these other skill sets you can learn. Like, you guys can actually learn how to code for AI. It's not as difficult as you think. You can learn how to do some of these things, but because you have the discipline to learn how to sell real estate or sell solar or whatever the job that you look for when you get out of the military, if you're going to notice that you have a level of discipline and accountability that a lot of your competitors don't have. You'll notice that. My PA is an Army captain. My personal assistant. So like, he used to be an Army captain until he got out. We hire a lot of former military guys to work for us. We have 3 F-18 pilots that are in right now. And so that's one of the common things that we have, because we all kind of get it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If something goes wrong, we're there to help each other, but at the same time, we hold each other accountable, and then no one's offended. That's another thing you're going to find is that.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about this for sure. Yeah. Offense. Tell me all about it. I got to hear it.
So there's one issue that I have, and by the way, with my girlfriend too, is the issue that like when I give her constructive criticism, she doesn't understand that it's coming to her at 0. There's no emotion and it's totally dispassionate, because she was never part of a military unit. She doesn't understand. It's like, you suck, nice boots, you suck. Like they don't understand this is what you go through. Initially, when you go through any kind of basic training or OTS or whatever, they beat you down so that the part of doing this, I think there's 2 parts. One is to pick out who the narcissists are, and so they don't want these people in your unit. But the second reason why I think they do it is to get you fully acclimated to taking criticism at a 0. And I learned how to do that. I do a sales call. I do a call with my sales team every Thursday at 3. And when I do the call, the first thing I ask is, what did I fuck up this week? What objections did what objections did my podcast create for you that I can get rid of? And I've gotten to the point where I've got good at not creating extra objections, but that's something I do, and I look for this criticism. Other people in my life, including my family members, my mom, my girlfriend, I'm not saying they can't accept criticism, but they're not as good at it as what we were in the military, where it was like, hey, what you did was unsatisfactory. You know, if I didn't shoot expert with my M9, then I didn't shoot expert. It's like there's no feelings involved. And so that was one of the things. The ability to take constructive criticism is another massive thing that you leaving the military, you're going to have a massive advantage over your competition, because you're not going to take things personally.
I wonder so much about just how people are prepared for that kind of splash, and then into today's society too. Like, we're in this weird place where, you know, we've got such extremism on both sides of the political coin, you know, like what you say, what you do, like it's almost like offensive to be American now. Like, if you, God forbid that you have like a bald eagle on your shirt and American flag, right? And so military members are often like shoved into that kind of Republican place where they're just assumed to be conservative and, you know, Trump followers and, you know, all of these like really intense kind of level 10 things. And then, you know, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you know, you've got your very liberal side of things. And right now, you know, in hiring and practicing, you know, I interview a lot of people for my job. And one of the things I've noticed is there's definitely like this level of expectation of, you know, people catering to those people. I'll give you an example. One of my last interviews I just did the other day, someone said, hey, I just want you to know my pronouns are fill in the blank. And what do you do at your company that will create space for me and make sure that my, you know, preferences are respected? And, you know, in terms of like going back to what you said about like the offense level, I don't think anybody today has the ability to, not anybody, so let me rephrase that. I don't think we're raising a generation of tough people that can handle things that are different to their own, right? Like opinions that are different, political views that are different, et cetera. Do you really believe that the military folks have that strength? Because I'm not sure that they do.
So Are we talking about, so remember the federal government writes laws that our U.S. military has. So like Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a federal law that was created it was an executive order from the commander in chief. So the thing is,
that was Clinton, right?
Yeah, it was Clinton. But so Clinton is doing a thing to the military, but he's not the military. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So regardless of whether or not you're pro or against this, but like, so we've promoted transsexual individuals to becoming flag officers recently. And that's something in the 1950s I don't think we would have expected to see. And so you have to ask the question, like, what does that do? Does that, as far as mission, morale, and discipline, I know some people who don't like that idea and some people who do, but I don't think it's something worth like hating somebody over.
Yeah.
I definitely don't have a problem with, I have no problem with it whatsoever with somebody being gay in the military. I don't even understand why that's even an issue. Maybe showering, a bunch of dudes showering together. Maybe I could see that, right? But it was just it's one of these things where it has gotten to an extreme level.
Yeah.
And so to acquiesce to that, I feel like, I don't know. That part right there is something that I think we're going to be debating for like another few decades.
Yeah.
About what we've done to the military as far as that's concerned. But as far as the political views, a disproportionate number of people in the military are from the South. A disproportionate number of people who are in the military or prior military are conservatives. So that is something that you have to deal with. There's a chapel on every, in every base, and there's a reason for it.
Well, and the other thing people don't know is like the Star Spangled Banner, before every single baseball game and, all of that. That's all military marketing. Sure. Every single one of those experiences.
So are all the Transformer
marketing.
movies.
Yeah.
The Transformer movies are military marketing.
Yeah.
Top Gun is military marketing.
I used to be a recruiter for the military for many years, for almost 6 years.
Yeah.
I was a recruiter. And I remember some of the deals they would do. I used to go on stage with Zach Brown and do like the salute, to Chicken Fried Song and everything. Like there's so much, literally. Yeah. I have the craziest videos. And I've been on like the side of, right in 2016 when they opened the ranks for females to go into combat arms. I was on the side of buses and all of these things. And, there's so much military marketing, but to your point, it's mostly aimed at like these Southern states, these Republican states, things like that, to get the high schools, right? The relationships we used to have to make with high schools and funding the wrestling programs and all of that. Like, because it is so hard to find qualified military members.
I think it's going to get hard. I think it's hard to find qualified police officers too. I think that's another thing. I don't think we look at those positions the same way we did 50 years ago. Yeah. And so I think that's a question that our society is going to have to look at in the future, is like, how well do we want to do this? Now, there are people who believe, well, we're just going to pave it all over with artificial intelligence and stealth technology and, surface to air missiles and things like that and drones. And I don't know how well that's going to work. Maybe it will. But there's a lot of questions that we're going to have to ask about our future. Like, I think the military we had in 1944 that invaded France was the military we needed in 1944 because we didn't have drones or radar or satellites. I think the military we have now is probably more apropos to the combat society that we have now. But this military is, you're right, it's a little bit less monolithic. And I don't mind the open-mindedness to it. Just as long as it continues to function at the benefit of mission, morale, and discipline. Does that make sense?
No, totally. One of the things I was talking about with another military member the other day was how, when I went through basic training, I went through in 2006. Yeah. We were still doing like Vietnam era stuff, building foxholes and all of that. We didn't use a single foxhole over in Afghanistan, right?
No foxholes. Ain't digging that shit.
Yeah, it was, carrying around your e-tool everywhere, we were doing like really, really hardcore, like World War II, Vietnam era stuff. And to that point, it seemed like none of the training or even the way that the drill sergeants would talk to us, or after I even left basic training in AIT and I went through and I grew up through the ranks, the way that people treat each other in the military is so awful. The way that people talk to each other, the gossiping, like it's really, really toxic. It was, at least for me. I can't speak for everybody, but for me it was a toxic environment. I think
when you have a hierarchy like that that's like totally male dominated or almost entirely male dominated, you're going to get like women. Do you ever notice the colonel's wife? She thinks she outranks all the other wives 100%. On the base.
Right. Yeah. So there's like a pecking order.
Whole thing with the colonel's wife, right? So it's just one of these things where you promote specific dynamics which lead to people being hyper judgmental.
Yeah.
You see this in churches too. Like, it's not just the military. And so you're promoting this hyper level of judgmentality, which is one of the reasons why I left. Like, Do you know any 06s that aren't married? I don't know any. Like it's like almost like a requirement.
And they're all cheating on their wives.
Yeah, for sure. Like to become an 06, you have to be married with a master's degree. And it was like, I have to get married to be an 06? Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, the craziest thing to me is I'm 46. When I see guys that I have pulled out of fucking bars, drunk as shit, and thrown them in the back of my old ass fucking Toyota, and now they're getting promoted to 06. That is crazy to me.
100%.
That is like dude, it's so crazy when we were kids, bro.
Yeah.
We were kids flying on fucking flight status back in like 2003. And now these guys are running base. They're fucking base commanders.
Yeah.
And it is crazy to me that these guys are doing this. And I'm like, dude, I remember you almost pooping on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were so drunk that one night. And
I
that
just
part's
can't,
crazy.
like, you know, like the differences between like the military and the civilian side, it's so mind blowing. Like when I was a recruiter, we used to take the new recruits on a like RSP recruit sustainment program weekend where we would all train them and everything.
Yeah.
And I had a fellow instructor that was a E5 or E6 at the time, like myself, who got drunk and stole one of our buses and like was riding around the base. I think he wanted to go get food or something. And you know what they did? They just swept it under the rug.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
He could have got like a DUI. I think he did get a DUI or
It's
something.
madness,
Yeah, but they just
bro.
swept it under the rug.
Yeah.
So it's so crazy. But I bring this up just because I really want to kind of address like, I want to talk about a little bit about mental health.
Sure.
And, you know, like everything we go through, like these huge dynamics, you know, with the way that the military at least trained me and probably you too with the, I think we ran around, what year did you get out?
04 to 11.
Oh, yeah. So we were in at the same time.
Yeah.
So you got out in 2011. I was in Afghanistan in 2011. So around that time, you know, everything was so toxic for me, at least in terms of like how I connected with leaders and things like that. Really, really kind of like archaic way of working. And with the way the world is changing today, like if you look at like Gen Z and our younger generations that are kind of coming up, the military's really, really got to change the way that they instruct and their courses. And, you know, like we shouldn't be building foxholes anymore. And like they almost have to like adjust
I see what you're
because
saying.
now, you know, people have a choice. They don't have to join the military.
I think their way of
They have a
doing
retention
that
crisis.
is, I think their way of trying to respond to that is the Cyber Command, the 2nd Air Force, I think is what it's called, and then the Space Force.
Space Force.
Yeah, I think because we're going into that, then the nerdier kids who are streamers that end up joining the military, I think there's a place for them.
They recruited, the Space Force recruited right from the Air Force. Did you know that?
Of course. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure they would.
The most
Yeah.
intelligent people. I mean, I wanted to join, but I was, you know, I'm an army girl.
What's they call it, green to blue?
I'm not
Yeah.
smart enough for that.
Call it green to blue.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. This did any E try to get their O card punched with you?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. No, I would
You're
have
not
this
in
all the time.
anymore. You're not in anymore. Did it ever?
No,
never happened.
no, absolutely not. No, I definitely had a really rough go of it when I was young.
Yeah.
You know, because I was 17 when I joined.
Gosh.
Yeah, I was 17. So
Did an officers try to get with you?
Not only did they try to get with me, I had like, in fact, I was on a flight back from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I was going on my 2-week vacation. And on a private plane, sorry, not private plane, commercial, they have a chartered plane, whatever. I was in the bathroom and I come out and there's this 06 there standing there. And he wasn't there to use the bathroom. He was there waiting for me to come out of the bathroom. And he was like, hey, where are you going? Where are you taking your vacation? Right? Like just started like having a conversation with me. Guy's married, you know, he's wearing a ring on his finger. And he was 100% like, hey, I know we're gonna, you know, be at this layover because we're going to Bagram, right? And we're gonna be at this layover. He's like, what are you doing? You want to go over to the, you know, chow hall, whatever, and get some food with me? Like kind of basically like trying to proposition me. This would happen all the time.
Yeah, I never punched my E card. Sorry. I would tell you if I did. I never did it.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, fraternization is officers and enlisted are not supposed to sleep together. And it happened, obviously. And if it did happen, what you had to do was you just showed up to work married one day. Have you ever seen this happen?
In fact, I have a girlfriend who literally just did that. She was the enlisted. She was going through OCS,
Yeah.
and the only reason why she was going through OCS, she hated it, was because her partner was an officer.
He was an officer, so she wanted to become an officer, so it was legal.
Well, he was going to break up with her otherwise.
Yeah. So that's the way, like basically if a sergeant is dating a lieutenant on the DL, if they just go get married and showed up to work married, then it's legal.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you are married before you become a Catholic priest, you can
so
keep your
wrong.
wife. It's the same kind of thing. Like you can inherit an enlisted spouse, but you can't sleep with one while you're an officer on active duty.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
This is the stuff that we need to like revolutionize and change though. Like these type of like, it's almost like a religious cult, you know, it's like you have certain rules you got to live by and like a certain pecking, like all these things. Those are the
You think
things
we shouldn't have those things? Like I don't think you should sleep with enlisted in your unit.
No. But I definitely don't feel like it's,
I don't think you should gamble with them either.
I don't think it's the military's place to like reprimand someone if they step out on their partner, because you know there's a whole
so this is a whole different thing.
UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, for you that don't know. It's literally against the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Imagine on the civilian side, it's against the law to cheat on your partner.
Yeah, if you cheat on your partner, there's actually punitive things that can happen.
They will kick you out of the military.
You could get jail time. Like it's crazy if you cheat on your partner. So that is why I think a lot of girls want to marry these fucking E3s. They want to marry them before they go off and deploy, because they know if these guys cheat, they can.
But what's so crazy about this is, as you know, and you're so smart, you have the numbers in your head. The statistics of people getting a divorce, it's like 80%.
Yeah, so it's outrageous in the military with the Army wives thing. Yeah. It's really problematic. They actually did a show about it. Remember, there was but the number was specifically, I believe, of those who deployed during World War II to the European front. When they came home, 75% of them had to file for divorce or had already been filed for divorce because they were gone for so long. Yeah. And you can kind of understand that. But one thing we talk about in Men of Action when it comes to like dating, it is alpha to be there and it is beta to be away. And that might not make sense, but it's like the guy who's the 80% solution who's there when she misses her 100% solution boyfriend who's deployed. The 80% solution is there when she's had a couple of drinks and she needs a warm body to lay next to. In her mind, it's not even cheating. And so you end up with that situation where you come back and it's pretty prevalent. It's pretty rampant as far as the cheating that goes on there. You're dealing with a lot of high testosterone individuals who just like provide for their family and then leave. They leave for a long time. And it's not like when you're going to Bagram, there's like girls to hook up with. Maybe in Saigon, but they're not in fucking Bagram. Yeah. It's like there's nobody's cheating on their wife in Bagram or in fucking Balad. That's not happening. So
I mean, then you got the Russian girls and stuff like that have like the little haircut shops and the little fobs and the cops over in Afghanistan.
Okay, yeah.
In Sharana, they had like this tiny little barber shop, and it was people that they literally flew in from Russia or wherever they were.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. So mental health, I really want to tap on this.
Yeah, for sure.
So whatever you're comfortable sharing, but did you have any struggles mentally?
I didn't, because there was the advent of social media, and I was the first guy messaging my friends on Facebook from Iraq. Like it was not even a thing. I really did a good job of keeping in touch with people back home, talking to my mom as much as I could. I would call into sports shows when I was deployed sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, I would get up in the middle of the night and call it. They would put me at the front of the line, and I'd call it and just talk to my favorite sports anchors. It was crazy. So that's what I would do back then. And then a lot of video games and a lot of jiu-jitsu and a lot of basketball. So I really didn't, I got to be honest with you. I feel a lot of empathy for them, but I can't, or I feel a lot of sympathy, but I can't empathize, because I was happy while I was in the military, and I was pretty happy when I got out, because I was like, hey man, I was in the military. I can use this on a job application.
But I think what you just said is so powerful though, because you just named off a bunch of things. Jiu-jitsu, you had this thing of calling in the sports shows. Like you had all these like activities that you were doing where it was clear that you were surrounded by community and all of that. So that in itself is very telling of how you even prevent getting issues.
So on base, I was not the cool kid. I was not, because I was kind of a misfit, because I would go out all the time. Off base, I was the one everyone wanted to hang out with. So at parties at my place, whatever. And there's always a pilot that's like that. There's just like the crazy one. And I didn't drink. Some of these guys would drink you into the ground. Like some of these guys would drink you.
That's
to
half
death.
the problem for some people.
Yeah. So as far as the mental health thing, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. It is irresponsible for you to put a 18-year-old kid in Clovis, New Mexico. It is irresponsible. And I'm calling on the military for this. Stop building these fucking bases in places where there are no women. You can look up the studies. The stats are pretty clear. Men do not commit suicide when they are in a happy relationship with the opposite sex.
Wow.
When you put them in horrible situations where they live in Altus, Oklahoma, they live in Clovis, New Mexico, and I'm talking about the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then you're wondering why there's a fucking mental health issue. I will bet you that the suicide rate for people at Nellis is probably the lowest. Actually, the lowest will be Hickam. I will guarantee you, nobody's taken their own life at Hickam Air Force Base.
Wow.
Not nobody, but Pearl Harbor, Hickam, you'll find that the suicide rate for some reason is lower, and the suicide rate for some reason when they're at fucking Altus Air Force Base is higher. Why is that? It's because you did. But Lawton, was it Fort? I forgot what the fort in Lawton, Oklahoma is. But it's like when you do this, you take a bunch of men at the prime of their testosterone their peak testosterone levels, and you put them in a place where there's like 10 guys to every girl, and they're like being told what they can and cannot do, and then you're wondering why they're taking their own life.
Yeah.
Military, it's your fault.
Right.
Take care of these men. Part of taking care of a man when he's in his early 20s is he needs to be around and socialize with the opposite sex. If you don't understand how that fits into mental health, you're not paying attention, because the studies and the science support what I'm saying.
Wow.
Men are less depressed when they're around pretty girls on a regular basis. This is not earth-shattering science. So I don't know, like, I guarantee, look at the suicide rate for people at Los Angeles Air Force Base.
I'm actually dying to know. I'm going to look this up after the show. And
And you're going to probably find, wow, it's really, it's not that bad. It's funny. Andrews is not that bad. It's so crazy. Bowling Air Force Base, there's no suicides there. It's crazy.
Was it like
I'm not saying none. By the way, some people are going to get mad because they know someone who took their own life, whatever. But there's just a big difference between Columbus, Georgia and Atlanta, Georgia. If you're at Dobbins Air Force Base. And that's my point is, like, give me something to do when I'm off work other than drink myself under the table and then get cheated on by my wife while I'm deployed. Give me something else to do.
Well, I mean, it's also going back to what we were just talking about a second ago, when they literally criminalize them having any kind of activity with women, where you've got commanders saying, okay, no talking to the local females, no, you can't have pictures of your wife. I mean, I literally got in trouble when I was over in Afghanistan because I had naked pictures of myself, and I got in trouble for having pictures of myself because I wanted to send them to a boyfriend of mine back home. And it's just those types of things where they've got to stop making it a criminal activity to just be a human.
Interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting one. When you're deployed, I think you got to get used to, like, I don't know, jerking off in the shower, I guess. But like when you're back home, I think it's fucking so irresponsible that we build these military bases in the most podunk ass towns you can imagine, and then wonder why these gentlemen want to take their own life.
But there's not even any outlet for them sexually. Like, sex is such an essential part of who we are as humans, right? And then they make it a bad thing for you to be masturbating. Bad thing. Remember the saltpeter? They used to give saltpeter.
No, what is that?
You know what saltpeter is. Come on, saltpeter. They used to give it to people in World War II and World War I. It's like literally like to stop them getting erections.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I thought the saltpeter was for a treatment for some disease. Okay,
no, they would it was standard issue. Take your saltpeter. It's like it to basically suppress no porn, no sex, no local girls, none of that. That's why the issue of sexual assault's going up in the military, because they can't get it anywhere else. So they're going to try to get it from the girls that are in the military next to them.
It's a dirty little secret, but like no one would get into a debate with me about this because the numbers are going to favor what I'm saying. When you take young men and you put them in a place where there's just as many young women around them, you see less violence, you see less crime. Men who are married are less likely to be violent criminals. Men who are having sex on a regular basis are less likely to suffer from depression. If I can show you data that shows this, why did you build a base in Clovis, New Mexico? Why? I don't do you understand? Like, that's my point. Why did you put one in Indian Springs, Nevada, Creech? Why did you put one 2 hours away from any kind of fun?
Yeah.
You did so because it was cheaper, because you could provide jobs to people in your state. But part of the thing is, from this point forward, this needs to stop. This taking young men and keeping them away from women for their entire professional lives there is just not a good recipe for mental health. And it's so funny because we're looking at every other solution except the most obvious one. Why did they take their own life? Because their wife cheated on them. Why did they marry this slag in the first place? Because they didn't have any other choice, because they were at No Hope Pope, or they were at Fort Bragg, and there was like fucking 70 guys to every girl, and this was the only woman that they wanted to hurry up and get married right before they took off so their wife could get benefits, and then the woman ends up cheating on them because they have no abundance in their life.
Right.
But again, everything I'm saying is undeniable, but yet you will not hear the military take me on in some kind of debate about this. They'll be like, because they won't admit the reason why these people are taking their own life in a large part is because you put them in terrible situations with the opposite sex.
Yep. Okay, so I have a couple more questions, and then we can get ready to roll into the next show, Access Vegas here. So you are obviously an incredible instructor for Men of Action. What are some of the things you instruct your males in your course to do to kind of protect their mental health and set them up for success?
So for me, it's funny. So number one is gratitude. You live in a time where there's broad spectrum antibiotics. You can fly in a metal tube at 600 miles an hour, go anywhere in the world. You don't have to, it's not like a year's, if you wanted to go to South Africa, it's not a year's salary, right? It's not that, it's expensive, but it's not that expensive, right? You can eat all the food you want. If you wanted to right now, you could be on minimum wage and eat enough calories to kill yourself. Like, we live in a pretty good time. So gratitude is the first one. Also, the recognition that no one really gives a fuck about you. They don't. You live in a country where a man fucked a porn star when his wife was pregnant and we elected him president of the United States. You live in a country where a man transitioned to become a woman, killed someone in a car accident, ran them over, killed them, and was named Woman of the Year 4 months later. Like, you're sitting there, you worry about all this stuff you're going to do. If you can let go of this necessity to worry about what other people think, that's the second thing I would tell you. The third thing is the recognition of the fact that it's all going to end. For like me and Elon Musk, no matter how rich he is, we're going to end up in the same place in 100 years. We're going to both be just as dead as the other one is. Okay. What did Elon Musk say? I want to die. He goes, I would love to die on Mars, just not on impact. It's like that. We're both going to end up in the same place. And then the last one is present moment awareness. So it's the concept of just like recognizing that your brain, what it wants to do is interpret the past and predict the future, which only causes suffering for you. The complete and total acceptance and lack of resistance to the present moment is one of the best ways to like protect your mental health. That's what it is. These are 4 great things that I found, and I don't hear them a lot. Well, the gratitude thing I do hear other people talk about, but those are the things that really help me that I talk to with my clients, especially when it comes to their mental health. The gratitude one is like the biggest one. Like, just you realize that half the Earth's population lives on $1 a day. Look at the people who like have to live in Haiti. The people who don't have clean water in certain parts of Africa. Like, you're complaining, bro. You have nothing to complain about. Yeah. Like, incredible. People who like illegal immigrants who come across and like raise children and they're happy as shit. And you're just sitting there sad because you live because your neighbor has a newer car than you. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's almost a choice, almost. Yeah.
So it's a choice to have gratitude, present moment awareness. It's a choice to recognize that it's all going to end for you. And it's a choice to recognize that nobody cares what you're doing. Yeah. You think about the most famous person in the world today, whoever it is. You want to say it's The Rock or Obama or whoever the fuck, Donald Trump, whoever the most famous person in the world is. How did that person affect your life today? And you're like, oh, they didn't. Lionel Messi didn't affect your life today? Really? They're the most famous person in the world and they didn't affect your life. You're not that famous. How do you think you think anyone gives a shit that you posted a fucked up meme today? Nobody cares. Nobody cares that you did go to the gym. And here's the bad part. Nobody cares that you didn't go to the gym either. Nobody cares. No one's there to save you. So when I come to that realization, and it just creates total and complete liberty for me. Freedom to know that I can do whatever I want. And instead of worrying about the fact that nobody cares, it's more like I'm free, because instead of like, oh, nobody cares, wah, wah, wah. It's like, nobody cares. I'm free. I'm free. You know what I'm saying?
Powerful.
It's very powerful. Like, the day you get out of prison, just imagine you've been in prison for 10 years. The day you get out, you don't care what the prison guards think anymore. You don't. You're free. You're free. When you stop caring what they think and when you're completely outside of their bounds, you're free. They don't have power over you anymore. And so like that's kind of the thing. Like, you get that freedom from choosing what you give a fuck about. That's why I like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. He talks about that. You get to choose what you care about. So when you do that, I think that's probably the key to mental health. It is not for everyone. Some people significantly, like, I know Andrew Tate, I'm friends with him, whatever, but like I don't particularly agree with the idea that there's no such thing as depression. No, there is depression, but a lot of people who think they're suffering from depression just need to accomplish some goals, and then all of a sudden they won't be depressed anymore. A lot of times, if you just go and accomplish goals with other people, the depression will work. There are some people who legitimately are suffering from bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, schizophrenic, schizotypal. There's legitimate mental disorders that people have that they need medication and treatment for, but there's a lot of people out there that really, if you just accomplish some goals, you notice that your mental health will be much, much better.
Wow. Powerful. Good way to end the show. Michael Sartain, where can people find you?
Just look me up on Instagram, or a bit easier with just Google me and look me up on Instagram. It's Michael Sartain, 14 letters. If you can't find me doing that, you're not good with words. But yeah, that, or you can go to my school server. If you hit me up on Instagram, I'll put you on a free school server. It's skool.com/men of action free. There's a hyphen between each word. Or you can just go to moamentoring.com. That's the company I have. And if you just want to skip the line and go to the front and join our family, you're welcome to do that too. And then if you're actually looking out there and you're looking to be if you're a high ticket closer, if you're a setter, we're looking to hire. I will tell you, we mostly hire from within, but if you're looking to do that, we've interviewed about 800 people so far to come work for us. We're trying to grow our sales team. So if you're interested in that, make sure you go to moamentoring.com/jobs. And then we have a bunch. We're hiring like crazy, man.
Get some of those military folks. Awesome. Michael Sartain, thank you so much. This is the Amy Is Show. Thanks for watching.